The ultimatum. Commander Elena Reyes stood at the observation deck of the EE's Defiant, watching as the massive Galactic assembly station came into view. The structure resembled a gleaming silver lotus in bloom, its petals extending outward to house hundreds of different alien species. Lights of various colors pulsed along its surface, signifying the countless activities within. "Quite the sight, isn't it?" remarked Dr. Marcus Chen, the delegation's xenobiologist. "Hard to believe that just 15 years ago, we thought we were alone in the universe." Elena nodded, her dark eyes never leaving the station, and harder still to believe that after all this time, they still treat us like children. The Galactic Assembly had discovered Earth during what they called a standard border expansion survey. Humanity had just begun establishing its first colonies on Mars when massive alien ships appeared in orbit. The panic lasted weeks, but eventually, first contact proved peaceful, if condescending. Humanity was deemed a juvenile species, granted observer status only. For 15 years, humans had been allowed to watch council proceedings but never vote, never truly participate in galactic governance. "Commander, we're receiving docking instructions," reported Lieutenant Karim, the communications officer. "The Velari representative is requesting we expedite our arrival. Apparently, today's session is of unusual importance." Elena turned from the viewport. "Any idea what's on the agenda?" Karim consulted his tablet. "Something about the Rim World's crisis. 17 colonies on the galaxy's outer rim have gone silent in the past month. No communications, no distress signals, just silence." "Let's not keep them waiting, then," Elena said. "Tell the captain to commence docking procedures." As the Defiant approached its designated berth, Elena gathered her team. Besides Dr. Chen, there was Ambassador Sofia Rivera, Earth's official representative, Security Chief Jackson Miller, and linguistics specialist Dr. Lyon Park. 5 humans against hundreds of alien species, most of which had been spacefaring for millennia before humans learned to make fire. The docking process completed with a gentle shudder through the ship's hull. Chief Miller checked his sidearm, a diplomatic concession that allowed human security personnel to carry non-lethal defense weapons. "Remember," Elena addressed her team, "we're here to observe and learn. The Assembly has made it clear that our input isn't required or desired. But keep your eyes and ears open. Something about this emergency session feels off." The human delegation was escorted through the station's luminous corridors by a pair of Velari attendants, slender, blue-skinned humanoids with elongated heads and 4-fingered hands. They moved with practiced grace, their silver robes flowing behind them. "The session begins in 20 Earth minutes," one of the Velari informed them. "You will be seated in Observer Section Theta, as usual." Elena noted the slight condescension in the alien's tone. Observer Section Theta was positioned high above the main council floor, a place where juvenile species could watch without interfering. It symbolized humanity's place in the galactic order, present but powerless. The council chamber itself was an enormous amphitheater. At its center stood a holographic projection of the galaxy, currently highlighting 17 worlds in flashing red. Around this projection, in concentric circles, sat representatives from over 200 spacefaring civilizations. The most powerful species, the Velari, the Krix, the Nidoran Collective, and the Thisai Unity, occupied the innermost circle. The human delegation took their assigned seats, almost at the ceiling of the chamber. From this height, some representatives were barely visible. "They've arranged quite the turnout," Ambassador Rivera whispered. "I've never seen so many High Council members present." The session began with a resonant tone that silenced all conversation. High Chancellor Vexlor of the Krix rose from his seat, a massive, carapaced being with compound eyes that shimmered with bioluminescence. "Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Assembly," his voice boomed through the chamber's perfect acoustics, "we face a crisis of unprecedented nature. 17 worlds along the outer rim have ceased all communications. Our preliminary investigations show evidence of an unknown pathogen affecting multiple species. The Rim Worlds Crisis Committee has studied this situation for 20 standard cycles. The holographic display zoomed in on the affected worlds, showing data streams beside each one. Before communication was lost, Vexlore continued. Medical facilities on these worlds reported neurological degradation among the population. The pattern suggests a highly contagious pathogen with a lengthy incubation period. Dr. Chen leaned toward Elena. That's not consistent with any known pandemic pattern. If it were truly contagious, the worlds wouldn't have all gone silent simultaneously. Elena nodded, her suspicions growing. The Chancellor continued. After careful deliberation, the Crisis Committee recommends implementation of Protocol Omega-7, complete quarantine and isolation of the affected regions. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Elena noticed that many smaller species seemed disturbed by this announcement, while the dominant races remained impassive. Ambassador Rivera gasped quietly. Protocol Omega-7. That's their extinction protocol. They're going to abandon those worlds entirely. Elena frowned. How many people live on those 17 planets? Dr. Park consulted her tablet. Approximately 12 billion sentient beings across 23 different species. The Chancellor called for a vote. One by one, representatives of the major species raised their appendages in agreement. The Velari, the Krix, the Nidoran Collective, all voting to condemn billions to whatever fate awaited them. Before the smaller species could vote, Elena stood. It was a breach of protocol for observers to speak during council sessions, but something compelled her to act. Chancellor Vexlore, her voice rang out clearly, drawing all eyes in the chamber upward. The human delegation requests clarification before this vote proceeds. A shocked silence fell over the assembly. Chancellor Vexlore's compound eyes flickered with what might have been anger. The observer species from Earth has not been recognized, he stated coldly. Return to your seat, human. Elena remained standing. 12 billion lives are at stake. Before you vote to abandon them, I'd like to understand the nature of this pathogen. Our medical databases show no disease pattern that matches what you've described. Your databases are primitive, responded Vexlore. This is not the first time such measures have been necessary. The Assembly has implemented Protocol Omega-7 6 times in the past 2 centuries. This revelation sent a chill through Elena. 6 times before, how many worlds had been abandoned? And what happened to those worlds? She pressed, ignoring protocol entirely now. That information is classified beyond your clearance, replied a Velari High Counselor. Resume your place as observers, or you will be removed from these proceedings. Security drones began to hover near the human delegation. Chief Miller tensed, his hand moving toward his weapon. Stand down, Chief, Elena muttered. She sat slowly, her mind racing. Something was deeply wrong here. The vote continued, passing with overwhelming support from the major species. The smaller representatives seemed resigned, offering little resistance. Protocol Omega-7 was enacted, and a quarantine barrier would be established around the 17 worlds within days. As the session adjourned, Elena noticed a Thesai representative watching their delegation intently. The Thesai were an ancient species resembling tall, slender humanoids with iridescent skin. This particular individual made a subtle gesture that Dr. Park recognized. They want to meet with us, she whispered to Elena. Privately. The human delegation made its way through the station's corridors toward their assigned quarters. In a quiet alcove, the Thesai representative was waiting. You ask dangerous questions, Commander Reyes, the alien said in a melodious voice. I am Naren, third consul of the Thesai Unity. Elena studied the alien carefully. Those questions needed asking, Consul Naren. Indeed they did, Naren agreed, glancing around cautiously. This is not the first time Protocol Omega-7 has been implemented, as you heard. But what you do not know is what happens after the quarantine. The alien produced a small crystal data node. This contains historical records that have been purged from official archives. The 17 worlds now under quarantine are not being abandoned. They are being harvested. Ambassador Rivera repeated, her voice barely audible. Niren's iridescent skin pulsed with emotion. The dominant species of the assembly use Protocol Omega-7 as cover for resource extraction operations. The pathogen is engineered, released selectively to create the appearance of a natural disaster. Once quarantine is established, specialized teams move in to strip the worlds of valuable resources, including biological samples from the affected populations. Elena felt sick. You're describing genocide. A genocide repeated every few decades, targeting worlds rich in resources but politically expendable, Niren confirmed. My species has been complicit in this atrocity for centuries. Some of us can no longer bear the weight of that knowledge. Chief Miller's face darkened with anger. Why are you telling us this? What can Earth possibly do against the entire assembly? Niren's large, opalescent eyes fixed on Elena. Because you stood up. In 3 centuries of observing council sessions, I have never seen a representative challenge Protocol Omega-7. Your voice, Commander Reyes, one human voice, silenced the entire council chamber. If only for a moment. Perhaps humanity possesses what many of us have lost. The courage to speak truth to power. The alien handed the data crystal to Elena. The assembly reconvenes tomorrow to finalize quarantine procedures. Study this information. Use it wisely. There are others who feel as I do. Smaller species tired of being dominated. Ancient races burdened by guilt. You may find allies where you least expect them. With that, Niren departed, leaving the human delegation with a terrible knowledge and an impossible choice. Remain silent observers, or risk everything to challenge the Galactic Assembly's darkest secret. Elena closed her fingers around the crystal, feeling its weight. The weight of 12 billion lives, and countless more from the past. Let's get to work, she said grimly. We have until tomorrow to decide whether humanity will remain observers or become something more. Humanity's stand. Dawn cycle on the Galactic Assembly Station brought with it an eerie calm. Throughout the night, Commander Elena Reyes and her team had analyzed the data crystal provided by Consul Niren. What they discovered left them horrified and determined in equal measure. 6 previous implementations of Protocol Omega-7, Dr. Chen summarized, his face haggard from lack of sleep, each targeting between 10 and 20 worlds. Conservative estimate puts the death toll at nearly 80 billion sentient beings over the past 3 centuries. Elena stared at the holographic projection, showing the pattern of abandoned worlds. And each operation followed by massive resource extraction. Rare minerals, biological samples, advanced technology, all cataloged and distributed among the dominant species. It's a culling, Ambassador Rivera said, her voice hollow. They're managing the galaxy like a garden, pruning away competition while harvesting what they need. Elena nodded grimly. And we're just the latest seedlings in their cosmic garden. How convenient for them that we're still too juvenile to have a real voice. Lieutenant Karim entered their secure conference room. Commander, I've made contact with the representatives you identified. Most were reluctant, but 17 have agreed to meet. 17 out of 200 isn't much, Chief Miller observed. It's enough to start, Elena replied. Dr. Park, what about the transmission system? The linguistics specialist looked up from her console. I've modified our communication array to broadcast on all standard frequencies used in the chamber. We'll only have about 30 seconds before they can block us, but that should be enough to transmit the core evidence. Elena stood, surveying her team. What we're planning borders on insurrection. The Assembly could permanently ban humanity from galactic affairs. Or worse, I won't order any of you to participate. For a moment, silence hung in the room. Then Ambassador Rivera straightened her diplomatic sash. 80 billion dead, Commander. If we remain silent, we're complicit in the next 80 billion. One by one, the others nodded their agreement. Then let's move, Elena said. We have 3 hours before the session begins. The meeting took place in a maintenance sector, far from the sophisticated surveillance systems of the main station. Representatives from 17 species, all considered minor powers in the assembly, gathered nervously. A Folian delegate, resembling a tall insectoid with crystalline exoskeleton, spoke first. What you propose is unprecedented. No species has ever directly challenged Protocol Omega-7. Perhaps that's why it continues, Elena replied. Because the powerful expect the rest of us to remain silent. A Wendari representative, a being composed of what appeared to be liquid mercury contained within a force field, rippled anxiously. The Cricks alone could obliterate your homeworld with a fraction of their fleet. Why would humans take this risk when you have so little to gain? Elena considered the question carefully. On Earth, we have a concept called standing by. It means watching injustice happen without intervening. For much of our history, we've been guilty of it. But we've learned, painfully, that silence in the face of atrocity is its own form of complicity. She activated a holographic display showing the 17 worlds currently under quarantine. Today, it's these planets. Tomorrow, it could be yours, or ours. The Assembly's dominant species have proven they'll sacrifice any of us when convenient. A representative of the Loci Compact, beings with 4 arms and skin like polished bronze, leaned forward. What exactly do you need from us? When I speak in the chamber, Elena explained, I need you to support my request for an emergency motion. Assembly bylaws state that if 20 or more species second a motion, it must be heard, even from an observer species. One by one, the representatives signaled their agreement. Though fear was evident in their various physiologies, the alliance was fragile, built on shared vulnerability rather than strength, but it was a beginning. The council chamber was even more crowded than the previous day. News of the human outburst had spread, creating an atmosphere of tension and curiosity. The human delegation took their seats in Observer Section Theta, drawing suspicious glances from the security drones. Chancellor Vexlor opened the session with customary formality. Representatives of the Galactic Assembly, we reconvene to finalize implementation of Protocol Omega-7. The quarantine fleet will deploy within 6 standard cycles. Are there any procedural matters before we proceed? Elena stood. Beside her, Dr. Park activated the modified transmission device concealed in her diplomatic credentials. Chancellor Vexlor, Elena's voice rang out clearly. The delegation from Earth requests the floor under Emergency Provision 327B of the Assembly Charter. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. Vexlor's compound eyes flickered rapidly. Observer species have no standing to invoke charter provisions, he stated firmly. With respect, Chancellor, that is incorrect, Elena countered. Provision 327B states that any species, regardless of status, may bring forward evidence of actions contrary to the Assembly's founding principles. I have such evidence. Before Vexlor could respond, the Folian representative rose. The Folian Confederation seconds this motion. Then the Wendari. The Wendari Collective seconds this motion. One by one, the 17 allied species stood and seconded. The chamber erupted in confusion. The dominant species conferred urgently among themselves, clearly unprepared for this development. After several moments of chaos, Vexlor raised his massive claws for silence. It appears the technical requirements of Provision 327B have been met. He conceded, his voice cold. The human observer may present their evidence, briefly. Elena nodded to Dr. Park, who activated the transmission. Instantly, the chamber's central hologram changed from displaying the quarantined worlds to showing historical records retrieved from Niren's crystal. What you're seeing, Elena addressed the stunned assembly, is the true purpose of Protocol Omega-7. Not quarantine, but systematic genocide and resource theft. The hologram displayed evidence of the previous 6 implementations, stark data on population elimination, resource extraction, and the distribution of spoils among the dominant species. For 3 centuries, Elena continued, her voice steady despite the growing tension. The leaders of this assembly have been conducting a cosmic harvesting operation. 80 billion sentient beings, our galactic neighbors, systematically eliminated for their resources. Security drones converged on the human delegation, but several representatives from the allied species blocked their path. Chancellor Vexilor's voice boomed through the chamber. This is fabricated evidence. The human delegation is attempting to disrupt assembly proceedings with propaganda. Then investigate it. Alina challenged. Form an independent commission with representatives from all species. If we're wrong, prove it. The holographic evidence continued to play, showing disturbing footage of quarantined worlds being systematically stripped by harvester ships bearing assembly markings. Cut that transmission, ordered a Velari High Counselor. You can silence the transmission, Alina called out as Dr. Park's device was finally blocked, but you cannot silence the truth. Even now, copies of this evidence are being transmitted to every world in the assembly. This was a bluff. They hadn't had time to arrange such distribution, but the panic it caused among the dominant species was palpable. Enough, Chancellor Vexilor thundered. This session is suspended pending security review. All delegations will return to their quarters immediately. But Alina wasn't finished. Before we adjourn, I have one question for this assembly. The founders of your Galactic Union claim to value life, diversity, and mutual protection. Is this how you honor those principles? By sacrificing billions when convenient. Her voice carried throughout the chamber, cutting through the chaos. Humanity may be young by your standards, but even we know that power without compassion is tyranny, and security purchased with genocide is no security at all. The chamber fell silent. For a moment, just a moment, one human voice had silenced the entire council. You will regret this interference, Vexilor said quietly, his compound eyes fixed on Alina. Alina met his gaze steadily. No, Chancellor. The only thing I would regret is staying silent. The aftermath was immediate and chaotic. Security forces escorted the human delegation back to the Defiant, ordering their immediate departure from assembly space. But news of what had transpired spread quickly through the station and beyond. As the Defiant prepared for emergency departure, communications from dozens of worlds flooded their systems. Messages of support, offers of alliance, demands for investigation. We've been officially banned from assembly proceedings for spreading false information and disrupting galactic harmony, Ambassador Rivera reported, reading from the formal censure. But unofficially, well, see for yourself. She displayed a message from Consul Nirin. You have ignited something that has been building for centuries. 37 species have now formally requested an independent investigation of Protocol Omega-7. The dominance of the major powers is being questioned openly for the first time in living memory. Whatever happens next, know that you spoke for billions who had no voice. Alina gazed out at the assembly station growing smaller in their viewport. So what now? We've been banned from the only galactic forum that matters. Dr. Chen smiled slightly. Perhaps not. I've been monitoring communications between the allied species. They're discussing the formation of a new coalition, one based on genuine equality rather than power hierarchies. They're calling it the Galactic Cooperative. And they want humanity as a founding member, Lieutenant Karim added, looking up from his console in surprise. Chief Miller shook his head in amazement. All this because you couldn't keep quiet during a council meeting, Commander. Alina watched as the Defiant accelerated away from the station, toward Earth and an uncertain future. The galaxy had just become a much more complicated place, and humanity's role in it had fundamentally changed. One voice can't change the universe, she said quietly. But sometimes, it can start the conversation. Behind them, the assembly station shimmered like a silver lotus against the blackness of space, beautiful, ancient, and no longer untouchable. The end.